my name is Dwyer. I work here at the Naples and Harbor Yacht Club here in Naples, Florida. Today we're going to be doing the OMG, the Orange Mousse with Grand Marnier, big hit here at the club. I'm going to go over all the basics on how to make it and kind of troubleshooting if something's wrong. So we're going to start now, and I'm going to start working on the mousse first. Okay, so we're going to start with the Glaze. This is going to be the base for our Bavarian Cream. This is going to be the mousse for the OMG. First, we're going to do half and half vanilla bean, citrus zest. I use a little bit of lemon and a little bit of orange here. I've got my eggs here. I'm going to pour half of my sugar in the egg yolks and half into the liquid. Make sure that you whisk, because that will cook the sugar, or will cook the eggs. The sugar will cook the eggs if you let it sit. Make sure that it's very, 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 very well mixed. Turn on the heat. Now we're going to bring that to a simmer. Then we're going to temper it into our yolks. The key to making this Bavarian is to make sure that you cook the Glaze to at least 175 degrees Fahrenheit. I prefer about 180. I'm going to show you how to do that safely. Make sure everything is weighed out ahead of time. It's very important. I always want to be very organized, of course. All right, I'm bringing it to a boil now. This kind of infuses all the flavors together. And now we're going in the eggs. All right. Incorporating these in. Turn down your stove so you don't have an issue with the burning. What happens if you cook eggs too high of heat, you're going to have scrambled eggs in there, and that's not what we want. It's never what we want. So now I just use a whisk on here while it's going on medium-low heat. I just want to make sure that this is all the way up to 175 to 180. That's going to be a nice setting point for it. Of course, that's Fahrenheit, not Celsius. Okay. I always make sure I use the whisk because the metal helps with the sticking of the eggs and cooking of the eggs in the bottom of the pan. It's kind of a little trick. All right, we're about 180 here. Going to test it one more time, make sure that we don't have any issues here. We're 180. Now I'll add my gelatin. Okay, my Grand Marnier. And now we're going to stir it. Grand Marnier, gelatin, from Glaze. Grand Marnier is mixed in, melted inside, mixed well. Now I always strain it on top of here. Okay. Now I'm going to get a little bit of this at the bottom. Take a little spatula, and that way you get everything out of the bottom. Okay. You don't want all those little pieces. You see all the pieces of the vanilla bean and the orange zest and all that stuff. You don't want any of that in your mousse. It's just going to cause an unpleasant mouthfeel. So what I'll do now is I'm just going to cover this with plastic wrap, and then I'll leave it on the marble till it gets to just slightly warm. I would say probably 100 degrees, 98, slightly warm to the touch. Okay, so we've got our Glaze is cooled to room temperature, a little bit above room temperature, a little warm to the touch. if I was to measure it right now, it'd be about 98 to 100 degrees. Just warm enough to the touch that it doesn't set. Okay, I cover it with plastic so it doesn't have a skin. Easier to incorporate. Okay, so I take the Glaze and I just pour it directly into my mousse, stirring as I go, stirring constantly. Okay. Okay. You want to make sure you get everything out of the pan. This is all your flavor here. And of course, you can use this recipe with, doesn't have to be Grand Marnier, it can be limoncello, it can be, you know, any kind of liqueur that you can think of. It would work really well in here. Cointreau if you have it, or, you know, anything like that would be good. Now, when I whip the cream, I always whip it to soft peaks. I don't know if I mentioned that in the video earlier, but soft peaks is always recommended. Okay, here are the two molds that I use for the mousse in the center of the OMG. The first mold is going to be it's going to be J-O-H-O, Joho. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. It's the 3D sphere mold. I get these on Amazon. If you just look on Amazon with that name, Joho with J-O-H-O, 3D sphere mold, and that'll be this one here. Relatively inexpensive, like 10, 12 bucks. This one here is going to be the OCPO. I don't know how to pronounce that one, but it's on Amazon as well. This one is going to be a mini 3D mold. This is what I use for the insert. I always put my oranges inside of here at least 24 hours before. I use segment oranges, a little bit of Grand Marnier, vanilla bean, and sugar to taste. I don't really have a recipe because the oranges are varying in ripeness, so I always use it to taste. If the oranges are a little bit unripe and a little sour, I'll add more sugar, and vice versa. Now we put it right in the freezer. Leave this in the freezer overnight, and then unmold it in the morning or afternoon when you come in. You don't ever want to do this the day of if you can help it, just because you're not going to get a really good freeze in just an hour or two. You need hours. You need at least 8 to 10 hours to freeze this properly. Okay, now we're going to fill the molds with the mousse. This is what they look like when they come out, the centers. The mini molds, you can see that they're much smaller than the large ones. I really like this mold. Like I said, it's on Amazon. It's easily accessible. You don't have to get a minimum to order it, and it's not that expensive, so it's pretty cool. So what you want to do here is you want to fill it up about 3/4 of the way. Okay, just like this. You want to leave a little room at the top for the insert because of displacement. You're going to have a little bit of the mousse to go up in the mold, because when you put this insert in, it takes up mass. I'll put a little bit more of this in there. When you make this mousse, you want to fill the molds right away, because it is setting because of the gelatin. You have time, but you have to do it after you make it. You can't like put it in the fridge again and all that. It's just not going to have as much air in it. So you can see I've filled all my molds about 3/4 of the way up. Then I'm just going to insert my my center right there, right in the center there. You know, it's never gonna. I mean, try to make it perfect, but you know, if it's a little off, it's not gonna kill the dessert. So don't stress yourself out too much. Okay. So I'm just putting these centers in the center of my OMG. Okay. As you can see, they're all inside now. So I'll take a little bit of my mousse and I just cover the little top piece. Okay. And I take my little spatula. Okay. This one needs a little bit more. A little bit more, so you want a nice smooth top so it lays flat when you go to plate it. Voila, just like that, into the freezer. Make sure that this recipe will makes about 14 of these. It doesn't quite get all the way to 16, but I always reserve, I do 13 and I reserve a little bit of the mousse because that's the way you can create the top portion of the orange, which is the part of the decoration before you dip it. All right, so when you unmold the mousse, you want to make sure to put the top piece on, which is the make it look like an orange, the OMG. This is just a little bit of the soft mousse that I left over from the recipe earlier. So you want to make sure that you put it in there like this. See, it's got a nice top piece to it. Okay, then back to the freezer. All right, here we've got the chocolate glaze for the OMG. This is 50% white chocolate, 50% cocoa butter, and cocoa butter color. You can use a fat soluble powder color, or you can use the liquid cocoa butter. Melt it to 42 to 45 degrees Celsius, then drop down in temperature, let it sit, and let it drop down to about 28, 29. Then glaze. So I pull out the OMG from the freezer with the top piece on. My glaze is at 29 degrees Celsius, and I'm ready to dip. So I put the skewer in first so I can hold it, and then I dip away. I give it 2 good dips. Okay. Let it set. Then place on the silpat to harden and completely set. Then we'll start to spray after this. Now we're going to go over the spraying technique for the OMG, the orange. I've dipped them as I showed you, and they've solidified. As soon as they solidify, you have to spray the cocoa butter that you dipped them in a Wagner sprayer or something comparable. I'm using this one here. I've got this one on Amazon. I like it, but there are many options. So let me get the first coat on. Now we're going to turn it and get the other side. Now, I'll remove the cocoa butter from the machine quickly, rinse it out, and put my warm neutral glaze into the Wagner sprayer and spray the clear coat onto it. Now I've got my clear glaze that has been warmed in the microwave put into the machine, and I'm going to spray a quick light layer of glaze on the top to give it shine. And then I'll turn it around to get the back side. Gives it a nice velvet texture and nice shine to it. Now this is going to go into the fridge for a few hours to thaw completely, and it'll be ready for service tonight.